हैं मैं आपको शास्त्र दे दूंगा, वो शास्त्र पढ़ के उससे बाहर निकलो। पहले संसार बनाया क्यों, फिर उससे बाहर निकलने के लिए उपाय क्यों बनाना? पहले बनाओ ही नहीं है। That is Bhagavan's sense of humor. Bhagavan's sense of humor is create a problem and then give them the way out of it.
There was a prayer among someone in return. Forgive, O Lord, my little jokes on thee, and I forgive thy great trespass on me.
Ayyo Rama. नहीं कर सकते। ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। Heyatva avachanacha. This is the sutra that we have to do. Or we have done some lines? No. 2 lines. Nannishnaha mabhoditi mukhyam atmanam upadikshuhu tasya heyatvam bruyat. That's what? That's up to that we have seen. Yatha arundhatim didarshaishuhu sat samipastham sthulam taram amukhyam pratamam arundhati iti grahayatva tam pratyakhyaya paschad arundhati meva grahayati tadvan nayamatma iti bruyat. So this we have seen. So, okay, so thing is, if the Shruti really thought that the Jagat Karanam is Pradhanam, the inert, if that is the thing, then if Jagat Karanam is Pradhanam, the inert, then while teaching Sat, the Shruti would have said the Sat is something other than Jagat Karanam. If it is true that Jagat Karanam is inert, then the Shruti would have said Sat is something other than Jagat Karanam, because Sat is not inert. If Sat is not inert, then Sat is not Jagat Karanam. Simple. But the Shruti doesn't say that the Sat is not Jagat Karanam. It says Sat is Jagat Karanam. If it says Sat is Jagat Karanam, it doesn't say Sat is not Jagat Karanam. That is called Aheyatvam. See, it's not, doesn't say if Sat is not Jagat Karanam. Sat is other than Jagat Karanam, it doesn't say. It doesn't say Sat is other than Jagat Karanam. If Sat is, if the Shruti doesn't say that the Sat is not other than Jagat Karanam, it means Sat is Jagat Karanam. which means Jagat Karanam is not inert. If it is not inert, then it is not Pradhanam. If it is not inert, then it is not Pradhanam. Therefore, Jagat Karanam is not Pradhanam, Jagat Karanam is not inert, also because the Shruti doesn't say that this Sat is other than Jagat Karanam. This is what it says. Yatha, just as Arundhatim Didarshaishu. He gives the example. Arundhatim Didarshaishu. In order to show the star Arundhati. Arundhatim Didarshaishu. In order to show Arundhati, tat samipastham sthulam taram amukhyam prathamam Arundhati iti grayat. In order to point out a star called the Arundhati, we take the help of the bigger stars, because Arundhati is a very tiny star. It's just a twinkle. But it's very difficult to point out, the very small straight away. So in order to point out the very small, meaning in order to point out the very subtle, don't make noise. In order to point out the very subtle, you take the help of something gross around. This is the method that we all follow in life. You see, in order to point out, in this creation, in the context of this whole creation, if you want to point out Hardwar, first you have to point out the earth, then you have to point out first solar system, then the earth, then India, then UP, then Hardwar. Like this we move from the bigger to the smaller. We zero in on that particular thing. Similarly, if there is a small little tiny star called Arundhati in the sky, and you want to point out that Arundhati for the benefit of the newly marrying couple, the boy and the girl who are getting married, you take them out and show Arundhati so that you get the blessings of Arundhati. What are the blessings of Arundhati? That is, Arundhati will bless you to live together like Arundhati and Vasishtha. Arundhati was Vasishtha's wife, and Vasishtha, the sage, and Arundhati lived happy with each other, trying to, it's not they are trying to follow each other's advice, also trying to follow certain disciplines, certain values, spiritual life. They lived a spiritual life. So here also, you just, have the darshan of Arundhati, so that, it reminds you of the fact that you too should live like Vasishtha and Arundhati. At least that sankalpa. But in order to point out that Arundhati, for this, first you have to take the help of the other grosser, bigger stars. That is called Stula. Yatha Arundhatim Didarshayishuhu. With a desire to point out Arundhati, Tat Samipastham. You Samipasam, something close to Arundhati. Something nearby, close to Arundhati. Samipasam. Sthulam, bigger star. Taram, star. Amukhyam, a bigger star close to Arundhati, but which is itself not Arundhati. हाँ, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है. You want to point out Hardwa, then you take the help of the solar system. But solar system is not Hardwa. Solar system. Or you take the help of, and then you take the help of the earth and then come to India, and in India also UP. And then having come to UP, there are so many towns. So where is Hardwa? Then you take the help of some more prominent cities and then guide the person's attention slowly to Hardwa. That is how it is always done. Similarly, in order to point out Arundhati, you take the help of the bigger stars which are close. That is why I said here, Amukhyam Prathamam, to begin with. First of all, you take the help of the bigger stars close to Arundhati. Prathamam Arundhati iti grahitva. When you point out some other bigger star close to Arundhati, not Arundhati but close to Arundhati, you think, oh, that is Arundhati. Then the one who is pointing out has to say, hey, wo Arundhati nahi. This is called Heyatvam. This is called Heyatvam. वो नहीं है. लेकिन उसको देखो, वो बड़ा वाला नक्षत्र है ना, that bigger star, you look at that. But don't conclude that is Arundhati. That's not Arundhati. I am only taking the help of the star to point out Arundhati. Grahitva tam pratyakhyaya. Then you tell the person, do you see that bigger star? Yes. Okay, now you leave that and look at the other star. Yes, I see the other star also. Now you leave that also. Then next to that there is another bigger star. Do you see that? Yes. Now you leave that also. Now next to that there is another star, smaller star. Do you see that? Yes. Is that Arundhati? No, that is not Arundhati. You leave that. Then next to that there is another star, still tiny. Do you see that? Yes, I see that. Oh, is that Arundhati? No, that is also not Arundhati. Next to that there is still tinier star. Do you see that? A small twinkle? Yes, I see that twinkle. That is Arundhati. That is Arundhati. So to point out Arundhati, you take the help of the other landmarks. The other landmarks. This is the method of teaching. You take the help of the other land. Pratyakhyaya paschat, thereafter, Arundhati meva, Arundhati ko hi, grahayati, conveys. Tadvat, similarly. Na nayamatma iti bruyat. Agar you want to convey the Sat, you want to convey the Sat. If the Shruti wants to convey to us the truth, the Sat, and then if the Shruti thinks that the Jagat Karanam, the source of the world, is inert, then the Shruti has to say, Sat is other than Jagat Karanam. Is it like this? This name and form is not Sat. Why? It is Jadam. Truth is other than the name and form. Why truth is other than the name and form? Because it is inert, it's not conscious. Truth can't be inert. Because truth is the Ikshata, it is said, it's conscious. So truth is other than the world. Other than the world means other than the world as world. Truth is other than the names and forms as names and forms, because it's inert. And if you say that the source of this inert matter is also inert matter, if that is the situation, really, if that is what the Shruti really thought, that the source of the matter is also matter, if that is what the Shruti honestly thought, you have to listen to this couple of lines very carefully. The punch is here. If the Shruti really thought that the source of matter also is matter, then the Shruti would have said the Sat is other than the source of the world too. Why? The Sat should be other than inert. World being inert, Shruti says the Sat is other than the world as world. And if the Shruti really thought that the source of the world is also inert, then the Shruti would have said that the Sat is other than the source of the world. But it doesn't say. It says the source of the world is Sat. That means if it is Sat, then it is not inert. If it is not inert, then it is not Pradhana. Another way of refuting. Shruti doesn't say. It's like, there is another example, very good example. Like in Indian context, you want to find out who is the husband of a girl. So you bring 10 boys, 10 men, make them stand in a line. And then this girl never takes the name of her husband. She never takes the name of her husband, not like the modern times. Husband's name is Vikram and a wife calls him Vicky. Vicky kahan gaye? So this is something, this is a different, there is nothing wrong in it. It is okay. Where is Vicky? Okay. But in the olden days, this girl never took the name. So 10 men you bring and put them in a line. Then how do you find out who is? She can't even say, this is my husband. She doesn't talk. She doesn't even look up. So all right, then you have to adopt this method. Is this your husband? She would say no. Is this your husband? No. Is this your husband? No. When you come to her husband, she doesn't say yes or no. She just doesn't say no. She doesn't say like this. She keeps quiet. What does that mean? Shruti doesn't say the Jagat Karanam is not Sat. Shruti doesn't say that the Jagat Karanam is not Sat. That means Jagat Karanam is Sat through Nyaya. But it does also positively say that Sadeva Samidamagrasi Dekameva, this Jagat, this universe before its creation was Sat. The universe was, before its creation, was Sat. And that Sat alone became the whole world. Thus, all these approaches clearly tell us the Shruti positively says in its own words, plus logic also says that sometimes having referred to Jagat Karanam, if it thinks that is not the Sat, then it would say it's not the Sat. Like pointing out a bigger star, in the process of pointing out Arundhati, you first take the help of, you point out the bigger star, and having pointed out the bigger star, you have to say, that's not Arundhati. That's not Arundhati. Until you reach Arundhati. And there you don't say, this is not Arundhati. If you don't say this is not Arundhati, that is Arundhati. That's logic. And indeed it says that is Arundhati. Not only it doesn't say it is not Arundhati, it says it is Arundhati. You see? And the Shruti doesn't say that the source of the world is not Sat. Thus, because it doesn't say that it is not the Sat, and also it positively says it is a Sat, and also it saw, etc., this Ikshanam, etc., prove that it is not Jadam, and therefore it is Sat. This is the topic. Grahayati tadva nayamatma iti bruyat, but it doesn't say. It should say, if the Shruti really thought that Jagat Karanam is inert, then it would have said, it must say the Sat is other than Jagat. Just as it said Sat is other than the Jadam, the word, Sat is also other than the Jagat Karanam, the Jadam. If it really thought it to be Jadam, but it doesn't think it to be Jadam, therefore it doesn't say that Sat is other than Jagat Karanam. Is all Mimamsa. Doesn't say. Nacha evam avochat, but it doesn't say no. Shruti never says that's not Sat. Shruti doesn't say that the source of the world is not Sat. Which means what? It accepts that the source of the world is Sat. Thus the truth is not something away. Truth is the very material with which the universe is made. Truth is that very Sat is the very material. Material, I am using the word material not in the sense of inert matter. Material is anything. Even truth is a material for the error. It's like saying, you see, you slipped and fell. So slipping is the material for falling, kind of. Slipping is the reason. It's the reason for falling. Like that. Water is the material for all the waves, gold is the material for all the ornaments. In the same manner, clay is the material for all the pots. Similarly, God is the material for the whole world. God is consciousness, and what is made is inert. How can Bhagavan be one of the things? Bhagavan is the one in which the whole world is made. This is it. Sanmatra Atma Avagati Nishthayevahi. Sanmatra, pointing out the source of the world. Atma, and that source as the observer. Talking about the source of the world and that source thou art. This much of talking. Nishtha eva is the culminating point. Referring to the source of the Jagat and referring to that source as thyself. Nishtha eva hi. This is the Nishtha, this is the where it culminates, the whole teaching. Shashtha Prapataka Parisamaptihi. The 6th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad concludes. Shashtha, the 6th Prapataka, the Adhyaya, Parisamaptihi, conclusion, Drishyate is seen. 6th chapter in Chandogya Shruti is seen to conclude only with the reference to the source of the world as the Sat, and that Sat as the Tvam, thou. Now if that is where it is concluded, that means the Shruti makes the reference to Jagat Karanam as the source and concludes. Shruti refers to the source of the universe as Sat and concludes. And therefore you have no scope to interpret that it negates it to be Jagat Karanam. Because it says that Jagat Karanam is the Sat, and that Sat thou art. Then it is over. Upadesha is done. Then the same Upadesha you give 100 times, it means only that. Conclusion is there. It's like Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah. You go on repeating Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya 100 times. Where does the prayer end? Om Namah Shivaya. But that's all the prayer. Hey Bhagavan, my salutation to you. So even if you say 100 times, the prayer is over with one Om Namah Shivaya. That's all the prayer. That's all the prayer. Similarly, even though 9 times the teaching is given, but every time it is the same. Therefore, because the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Shruti concludes with the reference to the source of the world as the Sat, you have no scope to interpret that the Shruti means, by the word Sat, it means something other than the source of the world. In fact, it means only, Sat means only the source of the world. And if the source of the world is Sat, then it can't afford to be inert. It can't afford to be Jadam. If it is not Jadam, then it is not Pradhanam. Thus, proper analysis of the Shruti shows that the Shruti is not even aware of some school called Sankhya school. There is no Sankhya school. Imagining matter as the source of matter is a good thing. Okay, next. Cha Shabdaha. In the sutra you have Heyatva Avachanat Cha. Cha is a conjunction, and like in English we have and is a conjunction. Conjunction. It's a connecting word. Cha. Here Bhashyakara says, hey, this word cha has something to convey. Otherwise there is no need for and here. If you say and it is so, means there is something else also. And you say he is and he drinks, means what? Aur bhi kuch karta hai. If you say he drinks, then it's okay. He drinks conveys something, and he drinks conveys something else. And he drinks conveys something else. Therefore it says, Cha Shabdaha Pratignya Virodha Abhyuchaya Pradarshanarthaha. Here he says, taking the source of the world, interpreting the source of the world as something inert, would go against the pratignya, the promise. The pratignya means, a statement that is made by Uddalaka to Shvetaketu before the teaching was begun. What is the pratignya? The pratignya was something else. Hey, by knowing which you come to know everything that is Sat. Truth is that by knowing which you have come to know everything. And if Jagat Karanam is Jadam, and by knowing the Jadam, you can't know everything. Because by knowing the Jadam, you don't know yourself, because you are not. You are not a Jadam. By knowing the Jagat Karanam, the Jadam, you would know the Jagat all right, including your body and mind, but you would not know yourself. Because according to you also, He Sankhyavadi, according to you, body is a part of the world. Mind is a part of the world. Purusha is not a part of the world. Purusha is something else. Therefore, by knowing the Pradhanam, you would know the Jagat, but not the Purusha. So, this particular Pratigna, by knowing which you come to know everything, that Pratigna would not be fulfilled if you conclude the source of the universe as Pradhanam. That is also highlighted by the word cha. Bhagavan says here, cha shabdaha pradigna virodha. This cha shabda is meant to convey that the pradhana theory would go against the pratigna. Pratigna virodha, abhyuchaya, an extra refutation. Pradarshanaartha, to show. This chakara gives us an extra argument to refute Sankhya-vada. Are you able to follow? Chakara gives us an extra argument to refute Sankhya. Refuting Sankhya-vada means coming out of our own ignorance, nothing else. Because we all think it's a universal thing, it's not a subjective thing. Everybody is likely to think that the source of the matter should be matter. Bas. Jagat ka karan jada hi hoga. By understanding the source of the jadam is not jadam but chetanam, you solve the whole problem. That means if Chetanam is the source of the Jadam, the only Chetanam that is available is the one who is aware of Jadam. There is no other Chetanam. If Chetanam is the source of the Jadam, then the only Chetanam that is available is the one who is aware of the Jadam, the oneself. Enlightenment, that means you get into a different topic. So if the Chetanam is the source of the Jadam, then the Chetanam is not of the size of Deha. Chetanam is unlike Deha, and therefore it is unlike the size, means it is free from the size, etc., etc. That is why that will again put everything in its place. That is, if the Chetanam is the source of the Jadam, then it becomes really, everything becomes very clear. That is that when the creation has negation, the source need not have, doesn't have negation. When the wave is gone, water continues. So this explains away what continues and what discontinues. The Srishti, the Jadam has discontinuity, Chetanam has continuity. Agrat Jadam has discontinuity, the seer has continuity, the dream has discontinuity, the one who saw the dream has continuity. Waking the dream have discontinuity, the observer, the truth has continuity, and that continuity, what we call Sushupti, is nothing but the continuity of one's, the subject, because it is also even the discontinuity of the Jadam is Anubhava Siddhamiti. And it will break the conclusion that I come and go and the Jadam continues, the most prevalent, the most painful conclusion. The most painful conclusion in life is the world continues and I come and go. I make money and go away, and then the world continues and the people continue to enjoy my money is a very painful conclusion. मैं तो चले जाता हूँ, and what I made is enjoyed by all these jokers. My God, it's very painful. This is empirically painful. This is called empirical painfulness. And that I come to an end goes against my nature, that creates spiritual painfulness. I am just only divide, all means the same thing. My money others will enjoy is a kind of a pain. This is called mundane pain. My money somebody else will enjoy is a mundane pain. That my existence will come to an end is a pain born of some spiritual ignorance. That goes straight to that I come to an end is something that goes against my nature. That's a fear. Fear of death. Fear of death is not a mundane fear. Fear of death is a spiritual ignorance born. Okay. Pradigna, Virodha, Abhyuchaya, Pradarshanartha. Therefore, when we say that the source of the Jadam is not Jadam, but the source of the Jadam is Chetanam, it has a fantastic, edge that cuts through all the errors. It is really reversing the entire thinking. The entire wrong thinking is reversed. It's just one reversal. Jadam is neither an independent fact, nor does it have another Jadam as the source, nor the Chetanam is the product of the Jadam. Jadam is the creation in Chetanam, meaning Chetanam is an independent reality, it is not born. Chetanam cannot be born of Chetanam. Chetanam is not born of Chetanam, that creates really regress. Ad infinitum, anavastha. Chetanam is not born of matter because we are saying matter is a creation in Chetanam. That means Chetanam straight away gets proved as is the eternal, is not ajam. Consciousness is not born of consciousness. Consciousness is also not born of matter. Why? Because matter is a perception in consciousness. In that case, consciousness becomes eternal, ajam. Reversal of the whole thinking. My thinking is matter is eternal, consciousness is a product which comes and goes. That is called adhyasa. Error must be atasmin tad buddhi means visualizing a fact as something totally different from what it is. It is totally, fundamentally different. So the Chetanam is looked upon. Chetanam continues to be experienced, but conclude. The experience cannot be negated by the error. The experienced truth cannot cease to be experienced through distortion. Distortion doesn't negate the anubhava. Distortion distorts what is in anubhava. The idea that it is the snake doesn't negate the anubhava of rope. I continue to be experiencing rope. I am seeing the object, rope. What I am seeing is rope actually. Concluding it, snake. Therefore, when I am concluding it as snake, I am not experiencing snake. I am seeing only the rope. Therefore, distorting, seeing it as snake, that distortion doesn't negate anubhava. Distortion is always of what is in anubhava. Therefore, consciousness can never cease to be within anubhava. Consciousness doesn't cease to be in Anubhava. But that consciousness that is within experience, the consciousness that one continues to be, is distorted, is concluded as synonymous with the form, or born of matter, or negatable with the negation of the thought, or conditional to the thought, born with the thought, gone with the thought, born with the memory, gone with the memory, etc., etc. I conclude the eternal as non-eternal. I conclude the unconditional, unconditioned as conditioned. I conclude the non-ajam as jatam. I conclude the unlimited as limited, etc. That's called judging the ever-experienced something as something different from what it is. And this particular thing, refuting Sankhya school means the source of the jadam is not jadam, but the source of the jadam is chetanam, reverses the whole thinking. That is why I said, refuting Sankhya school is refuting one's own universal thinking about the truth. There is nothing wrong. Now see how it goes against the pratigna. Satyapi heyatva vachane pratigna virodaha prasajjeta. Even if you say it is negated, but still there is a pratigna virodha. Satyapi heyatva. Actually there is no heyatva vachanam. There is no why propose it. One thing is, there is no heyatva vachanam. Heyatva vachanam means what? The Shruti doesn't say that the source of the world is not Sat. Remember again, I have repeated a number of times. If the Shruti ever thought, a very terse thought, this is a very terse idea, better goes. If the Shruti really thought, if the Shruti really thought that the source of the world is Jadam, then it would have said the truth is something other than that source of the world, because the Sat should not be Jadam, it has to be Chetanam. That is why it says it's so. It's something conscious. If the Shruti thinks the truth is something conscious, then it has to say it is something other than Jadam. But it doesn't say that. This is one point. Apart from that, pratigna virodha. What is pratigna virodha? Pratigna virodha prasajjeta. What is that pratigna? Karana vijnanadhi. The father, Uddalaka Swetaketu's father, he says, Karana vijnanad, by knowing the source of the world. This is called Karana Vijnana. Karana means here, it is not the Karanam that comes under causation. That's not Karana. It is not really a Nayyayika Karanam. And Karana means really that which is governed by the law of causation. That's different. Like the milk is the Karanam for the curd because it goes through chain. This is what is called, this one kind of Karanam. In fact, by knowing that one cause which has undergone changes and become all effects, understand, by knowing that changing cause, you would not know all its effects. By knowing one changing cause, you would not know all its effects. Because you have to know into which is the effect of, how is this an effect, how is that an effect, why there should be a difference, vagaira, 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 vagaira. Therefore, this pratigna means it is the changeless source, that is the karanam here. Like water. Water does not change and become the wave and bubble and breaker, etc. Water, remaining water can can become the waves and bubbles and tidal waves, breakers, etc. The peculiar thinking of the sages. That is Karanam. That is the real Karanam involving no change. Similarly, by knowing the source of the universe, which source remaining as it is looks the universe. Then, by knowing that source, you come to know everything. That is said here. Karana Vijnanadhi. By knowing the source, Sarvam, all, Vijnatam becomes known. Iti Pratignatam. This is what is stated. This is the Pratigna. And when Shvetaketu comes back from his Patshala, from his Gurukulam, when the son Shvetaketu comes home, the father asks him. How does he ask him? See? Because he was little, feeling little big. Lack of humility. The father saw in his son lack of humility. Because we are told education should make one humble. Vidya dadati vinayam. But this person seems to have lost humility through knowledge, through education. Therefore he asks him simple. तो ऋषि था, ये तो छोटा सा लड़का है. He says, and he picked up some French also. See, that makes it, problem. In school, he picked up some French. तब तो नम्रता होगा ही नहीं. Uta, yes, my dear Shvetaketu, Uta. Uta means, kya? Tam adesham, that teaching. Aprakshaha, did you ask? Did you ask for that truth? Did you ask for that teaching? Did you ask for that knowledge? Did you ask for that topic? Which topic? Yena shrutam shrutam bhavati. Yena, by knowing which? Ashrutam shrutam bhavati. By hearing which? All that is not heard becomes heard. Did you hear? Did you ask for that thing? By hearing about which you have heard, as good as heard everything. Ashrutam bhavati. Amatam matam. And did you ask for that topic? By reflecting on which you have reflected on everything. Avijñātam vijñātamiti. Did you ask for that topic by understanding which you have understood everything? Iti. See? Did you ask for that topic? That's only father asks. Uta kim tam adesham aprakshaha. That uta means kim. Tam adesham aprakshaha. Did you ask for that? Did you ask for that? And then in between a lot of other things are there, it's all cut. And now the son asks, Katham nu bhagavaha sa adeshaha bhavati. First time he says Bhagavaha. He addresses his father as Bhagavan. Otherwise he would address him different. Pitashri, best maximum. Pitashri, maximum. But now he says, Hey Bhagavaha. Bhagavaha means Hey Bhagavan. Very beautiful question. Katham nu bhagavaha sa deshaha. How is it possible? How is it possible? How is it possible that by knowing something you come to know everything? How is it possible that by hearing something you have heard everything, or by understanding something you have understood everything? How? Because we are told, and our reasoning also tells, by knowing a pot, I know only a pot. By knowing physics, I know only physics. By knowing chemistry, I know only chemistry. I know only, by knowing Bharatanatyam, I know only Bharatanatyam. By knowing Sanskrit, I know only Sanskrit, nothing else. But here you are saying there is some topic by knowing which you have known everything. Katham sa bhagavaha adesho bhavati. How is it ever possible? The student asked Sanna. And then immediately the father takes over. Yatha. Straight away he gives the example. It's like this. Why should it be impossible? Father says. Yatha, just as Saumya, hey Saumya. Saumya means addressing his own son. Yatha Saumya. Boy. Ekena mritpindena. By knowing one clay. By knowing one clay. Clay is counted as one. By knowing one clay. Sarvam, everything. Mrinmayam, made of clay. Vijñātagam syāt, becomes known. By knowing one clay, you come to know all that is made of clay. By knowing one clay, you have known all that is made of clay. Sarvagam mrinmayam vijñātagam syāt. And then what about pot, which is made of clay? Vacharampanam. You call it pot. Vacha, arampanam. It is started by your tongue. Vak. And the tritiya, the third case is vacha. Aramana means iska beginning hota. The beginning. You call it pot, but it is clay. That's a very big statement. You call it pot, but it is clay. There is no pot there. Pot is. It is as a statement of fact. You can't say it is a pot. It is a pot is not a statement of fact. It is a pot is a statement of my view. It is a pot is a statement of my view. It is clay is a statement of my fact. Is clay is a statement of fact. It is a pot is a statement of my view. That's called Vacharampanam. Vikaraha, the creation, what we call pot, Vikara, the Srishti. Namadheyam, it is only a name. Pot is a name started by my tongue. I give it a name, that's all. It is not a pot. See, now comes really being specific in thinking. It's a very fantastic discipline in Vedanta, I'm telling you, believe me. Here the father says, it is not a pot. It is a clay. It is looked upon. When you say this is a pot, it is not a statement of fact. This is not a statement. This is a pot is not a statement of fact. Within the mundane world, it is clay. In fact, even that it is clay is also not a statement of fundamental fact, because if you go into the Shruti, what looks clay is none other than, is made of yourself, is made of the very observer. Therefore, the fundamental statement of fact called Bhadasamanadhikaranam, that is, says, This is Brahman. That is the fundamental statement of right. Therefore, even, you see, just as that it is pot is my view, that it is clay also is a view. That it is the Brahman is the fact as realized with. Now, coming back to the point, what is the pratigna? Ekena mritpindena sarvam mrinmayam vijñātigam syāt. By knowing one clay, you come to know all that is made of clay. Vācārambana vikāro nāmadeyam. The rest is all just name and form. Mrittika ityeva satyam. Clay alone is the truth. Clay alone is the satyam. See, by knowing one clay you have known everything as clay. And then he says, evam is prakar. Saumya, he Shvetaketu. Sa adeshaha bhavati. This is how that teaching is. This is how the topic is. The topic that I am asking is this. Just as by knowing one clay you come to know all that is made of clay. Similarly, there is something, some satyam, some truth, by knowing which you come to know everything, the whole universe. That satyam, that topic did you ask for? And then says, how is it possible? It's possible like this. If I can know all that is made of clay by knowing clay, I can also know everything by knowing the material with which everything is made. That means the Shruti thinks, the Father thinks there is one material for everything. There is a common material for everything. There is a common truth of everything. The common truth for everything. Iti is prakar. Vakya upakrame, in the beginning of the teaching, Shravanat. This is the pratigna. Father made the statement like this pratigna. And now, if you conclude that the Jagat Karanam is Jadam, by knowing Jadam, you would know only all that is made of Jadam, you would not know the Chetanam. Because Chetanam, even as per the Purvapakshi, is not made of, even according to Sankhya. Sankhya school does not accept Purusha as the product of the Jadam, the Prakriti. But according to him, Purusha is other than the Prakriti, other than the Jadam. Therefore, by knowing the Jadam, the inert source of the world, you only come to know the inert world, but you would not know who is this observer is. By knowing matter, you know matter, but you would not know the one who is aware of the observer. Therefore, evam saumya sadesha bhavati iti vakyopakrame shamanat. Nacha sachabda vache pradhane bhogya varga karane heyatvena aheyatvena va vijñāte. Up to that, the meaning is, by knowing the source of the world as Jadam, by knowing the Pradhanam, the Jadam as the source of the universe, Bhoktruvargaha Vijñāto na bhavati. The one who is aware remains ununderstood. I mean, by knowing the Jadam, the source of the world, I cannot know. By knowing the inert source of the world, I can know the inert world, but I cannot know the conscious, the observer. Who is this observer? It will be left out. Why it will be left out? Because Chetanam is not Jadam. Chetanam is not a product of Jadam. How can the Chetanam be the product of the Jadam? And if you say Chetanam is the product of the Jadam, your fundamental logic that the source of the Jadam has to be Jadam, your original logic will be gone. Because you are concluding Pradhanam as the Jagat Karanam only on the basis of this causation. The source of the Jadam has to be Jadam. The source of the Jadam has to be Jadam. Meaning Jadam can be the source of Jadam. Jadam cannot be the source of Chetanam. Therefore this Chetanam's source cannot be Jadam. Then what is this Chetanam? One would remain in ignorance about the observer, even if one came to know the entire matter. And that pratigna will be gone. Because knowing everything means knowing everything including oneself. There is some reality by knowing which everything becomes known means everything including myself. And if you know only the Pradhanam, then you would know the world, not the observer. So pratigna ka virodh to ho jayenge. He makes a big, huge promise. He makes a huge pratigna. Pratigna is made with a bang. And at the end it simply fizzles out. मैं तो ऐसे कहा था. आपकी अंदर रुचि. In order to create ruchi, create some taste, interest in your mind, I told that huge lie. You can't say, I don't think sages ever thought like that. They were very, very, very serious in the sense, they were living every moment to convey, to know, to convey, to live the truth. Because life has no other purpose than really discovering the truth of this life. Therefore, that's not what. Okay, we'll continue it. The last couple of lines. We'll see it on. What are the last two lines? So what is the topic? That chakara, eyatva avachana cha, that chakara is also there playing its role by way of refuting the Sankhya school. By saying that, concluding Pradhanam as Jagat Karanam would go against the Pratigna in the 6th chapter of Chandogya. Because only there the word Sat comes. And that is the Mimamsa Vishay. That is the Mimamsa Vakyam. That is the Vakya. That particular 6th chapter is under observation, is under discussion. It is being examined. Thus, Chakara also plays its big role. Okay, we'll conclude this particular sutra. The next class, and then we have some more. Very. See, there are certain thoughts, real clinching thoughts, which are tough to follow. That's where you have the little concentration. Generally, the mind loses the grip over a thought when it becomes a little terse. It has a certain grip. There is a standard, grappling capacity. That is a standard capacity to grapple with a thought. And then even a little more, then the mind is chalo. The mind becomes a... Then the anandam doesn't come. That anandam doesn't come. Therefore, you have to just rise to the occasion. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaja Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om, Hari Om. Said no, we should have some question answer session. Said you come on Sunday, you can ask questions. We have time. Sunday is very difficult. Bada mushkil. You have to come. What questions? There are no questions. If you listen, if one is attentive, one is listening very attentively without missing any argument, actually, in fact, not only because the questions that you have, they get answered, just in 1 or 2 classes, really. Pali class mein ho jata hai. In fact, if you listen the very first talk, then afterwards you decide not to ask questions, just listen. Really. There is a lot to listen and afterwards we will see. What questions? Why questions nahi? Questions you can always, they're always welcome. But then, there is a lot. I have to be clear. What I hear, is it true or is it a bluff? So I have to verify. I should be busy verifying what I hear rather than really concluding. Without verifying, if you ask a question, it's all gone. I have to verify. And verifying means what? Verifying it to be true or verifying it to be bluff. Hey Rama, verifying it, is it really, am I there in deep sleep? Am I there in deep sleep? Is deep sleep my presence or my absence? If waking means my presence, if dream means my presence, deep sleep state means freedom from thought. Is it my presence or absence? I have to verify. For which I have to do? I have to verify. In fact, every vakya has to be verified in the light of anubhava. Where else do you verify? Vakya is verified in the light of anubhava. If it is an object. See, if there is an elephant outside, and then that particular vakya is verified when you go out and see the elephant, that means pratyaksha. Either I verify the vakya through pratyaksham, or I verify it through anumana, or I verify it when it comes to the satyam, the truth. I have to verify it in the light of the anubhavam. Is deep sleep. Does it imply my presence or does it imply my absence? I have to sit down and become serious about it. When I can't become serious about it, then I get a lot of questions to ask. Usko pehle dekh lo. Verify it. First you verify it and then come back. Supposing you say, I am not there. If you are not there, if that is the conclusion, then what is there to know? What is the good of knowing anything anyway? If deep sleep state means your negation, then what is there to know? That means you are negatable. If you are negatable, then what is there to hear? Once you have clinched that your existence is negatable, तो फिर रहा क्या है? फिर किसके लिए भगवान, किसके लिए धर्म, then what is there to know? If you have already clinched your absence in deep sleep, that means you have clinched your negatability with the negation of the thought, then is there anything else to know what? There is nothing to know. Thus, you think about the sushupti. Thus, vakyas should be verified. So, be busy with verifying the vakyas rather than some conclusions. They have no, so kuch nahi. Later on, one can always. In the process of verifying, if you have a question, that's a valid question. In the process of verifying, a vakya, vichar, vakya vichar ke andar, in the process of thinking about the vakya, if you get a doubt, something, you can always take the help of the teacher or another student, etc. It's like that. Doubts following vakya shravanam are real doubts. Doubts arising in one's mind before one hears Vakya Shravanam are not greatly valid. Not greatly valid. They are all respectable because doubts are respectable. But I am talking about valid there. A valid doubt is that by answering which there is a breakthrough. A valid doubt is that by answering which you get a breakthrough. That's a valid doubt. Why did God create? Is not a doubt that comes after hearing the Vakya. Why did God create the world? It's a doubt that is independent of Vakya. That is a very, very laukika doubt. In the sense, why did He create the world and put me in this world? And then, as if you have already verified that God created the world, etc. You have taken it for granted that God created the world to punish you, this conclusion. Having made this conclusion, then you can ask a question, why did you? Why did Bhagavan? Bhagavan has not created anything. Shruti says there is no creation, there is only Bhagavan. उस वाक्य को समझने के लिए, supposing there are doubts, then there are valid doubts. Understand the difference between the valid doubts? The valid doubts are those which rise after hearing Shravanam. The doubts before, see, I will give you another example. Before you hear Vedanta, just has no exposure to Vedanta. He comes to Vedanta. He comes to the teacher and asks a doubt. Why am I suffering? Why should I be suffering? This is not a doubt born of a Vakya, because the Vakya says there is no suffering. Supposing you ask a doubt, how is it there is no suffering? That is a valid doubt. How is it that I have no suffering? How is it that suffering is not a part of me? How is it that suffering is not my nature? How is it that suffering is not my nature? Is a doubt of a student. Why am I suffering? Why should I be suffering? This is a layman's doubt before he comes to Vedanta. Understand? One is a doubt in despair. Doubts entertained in despair. It's nothing but expressing your despair, and you call them doubts. You are expressing your despair and you want to pass a very questioning and intelligent mind. Actually what you are giving out is your despair. But the real doubts come after exposure, and those doubts also get answered. In fact, you see, if one may get, it's possible that one gets, to begin with, one says, how is it that suffering is not my attribute when I am feeling it so intimately? Then all right, you listen. Like in yesterday's class we were seeing knowledge of pot, awareness of pot, knowledge of pot is not qualified by pot. Even though I say knowledge of pot, in my expression I am qualifying knowledge. But in Anubhava, knowledge is not qualified by pot. Because the same knowledge becomes the knowledge of mat. The same knowledge becomes the knowledge of a tree. And the same knowledge becomes the knowledge of the moon. The same knowledge becomes the knowledge of the sun. That means knowledge itself is not colored by any objects. Knowledge is not colored by any objects. That means between knowledge and object, there is no noun-adjective relation. Between knowledge and object, there is no noun-adjective, Visheshana, Vishesha Bhava, noun-adjective relation is not. Between knowledge and the form, the relation is only one, truth and error. Truth and error means the actuality and appearance. Or truth and creation. Knowledge is the truth, a form is a creation in it. Knowledge is the truth. Form is the creation. Now that substance, the knowledge, we can't say it is qualified by the creation. Creation doesn't qualify the source. Waveness doesn't qualify waterness. This is all Vakyas, this is all really Vedanta. You get into the topic proper, then you are only doubting to know. Then you are only thinking and here and there taking the help of the teacher and the scripture. And you are moving, you are studying, you are doing Adhyayana. Those doubts, they are different from doubts generally people entertain before coming to Vedanta. I say, why did who created Bhagavan? If Bhagavan created us, then who created Bhagavan? These are all, lay, this just doubts. Doubts are very good. They are also we respect. Why did God create Bhagavan? Om Namah Shivaya. Are you